When people think of Sandra Bullock, they usually think of the movies first. The bubbly federal agent in Miss Congeniality. The astronaut fighting to survive in Gravity. The steely mother in The Blind Side. But there's a version of her story that rarely makes the trailers or the award show montages, and it's arguably more consistent than any character she's ever played. For more than 2 decades, Sandra Bullock has quietly written checks, often for $1 million at a time, every time disaster has struck somewhere in the world. She hasn't done it for headlines. In most cases, the donations only came to light because journalists went digging or because the organizations receiving the money made their own announcements. This is the story of that pattern of giving and of the causes she has chosen to stand behind again and again over the years. It's worth pausing on why this pattern stands out at all. Hollywood has no shortage of actors who attach their names to causes, host galas, or show up for a single high-profile telethon. What sets Bullock apart isn't that she gives, it's how she gives. There's no foundation named after her with a slick website and a press office. There's no annual gala with a red carpet built around it. Instead, there's a 2-decade paper trail of large, unglamorous donations that tend to surface only when a reporter cross-references a charity's donor list or when an organization thanks her directly in a press release. That distinction matters because it says something about what the giving is actually for. Bullock's charitable giving stretches back to the earliest years of her superstardom. After the September 11th attacks in 2001, she donated $1 million to the American Red Cross to support the emergency response. It was one of the earliest signs of a habit that would define much of her private life going forward. 3 years later, when a catastrophic tsunami tore through Indonesia and the wider Indian Ocean region in 2004, she gave another $1 million to the Red Cross to support relief work there. At the time, the organization's leadership publicly thanked her for what they described as an extraordinary gift, one that helped fund a humanitarian response spanning multiple countries. What's notable isn't just the size of these donations, but the consistency. This wasn't a one-time gesture tied to a single tragedy that happened to dominate the news cycle. It became something closer to a personal commitment, one she would return to again and again whenever disaster struck somewhere in the world. If there's one disaster that shaped Bullock's philanthropic life more than any other, it's Hurricane Katrina. In 2005, when the storm devastated New Orleans and the surrounding Gulf Coast, Bullock donated another $1 million to the Red Cross, contributing to what became the organization's largest relief operation up to that point. But her connection to the region didn't end with a single check. Warren Easton Charter High School, the oldest public high school in New Orleans, sustained roughly $4 million in damage during the storm. Bullock learned about the school's situation through a New Orleans lawyer connected to Mardi Gras philanthropic circles, and she began supporting the school's recovery. Her involvement went well beyond a single donation. She helped fund the renovation of the school's auditorium, paid for new band uniforms, contributed to scholarships for graduating seniors, and helped the school open an on-campus health clinic. She later called the investment in Warren Easton one of the best decisions she ever made, and she was eventually inducted into the school's Hall of Fame in recognition of her ongoing support. She also purchased a historic home in New Orleans' Garden District, deepening her ties to a city that would go on to have unexpected personal significance for her just a few years later, when she began the adoption process that led her to become a mother. By the time she was inducted into Warren Easton's Hall of Fame, she had already given several $100,000 to the school across multiple gifts, spread out over years, rather than delivered in one lump sum. That's a detail worth sitting with, because it suggests her interest in the school wasn't really about the initial disaster at all. Katrina brought the school onto her radar, but what kept her involved for years afterward was something closer to an ongoing relationship with a specific community and a specific set of students, long after the storm itself had stopped being national news. She has described being embarrassed by how slowly the federal government responded to Katrina, and has said that investing directly in an institution like Warren Easton felt like a more meaningful way to help than waiting on a broader system to catch up. The years following Katrina brought a string of global catastrophes, and Bullock's name kept appearing on the list of major individual donors. In January 2010, a massive earthquake struck Haiti, killing hundreds of thousands of people and leaving much of Port-au-Prince in ruins. Bullock donated $1 million to Doctors Without Borders to support emergency medical operations on the ground. A little over a year later, in March 2011, a magnitude 9 earthquake off the coast of Japan triggered tsunami that killed thousands and displaced hundreds of thousands more. Bullock again gave $1 million to the Red Cross to support relief efforts there. In 2017, when Hurricane Harvey caused catastrophic flooding across Houston and the wider Gulf Coast, Bullock pledged another $1 million to the Red Cross. In a statement at the time, she said she was simply grateful to be able to help, and that people needed to look out for one another regardless of politics. A Red Cross spokesperson noted that gifts of that scale allowed the organization to move quickly, providing shelter, food, and basic comfort to thousands of people in the immediate aftermath of the storm. The following year, when wildfires tore through California, including the devastating Woolsey Fire, Bullock donated $500,000 split between two organizations. She gave $400,000 to the American Red Cross and another $100,000 to the Humane Society of Ventura County to support the animals displaced by the fires. In her statement, she connected the destruction to the shooting that had taken place at Borderline Bar and Grill in Thousand Oaks just days earlier, describing the community's losses as compounding on each other. She added that everyone was in it together, whether human, furry, or feathered. Taken together, these donations add up to millions of dollars given over more than 2 decades, almost entirely without press events, red carpet appearances, or public campaigns attached to them. Much of what's known about her giving only came to light through reporting after the fact. There's also a pattern worth noticing in which organizations she keeps returning to. The Red Cross appears again and again across nearly every disaster on this list, suggesting a level of trust built up over repeated dealings with the same institution rather than a scattershot approach to giving. Doctors Without Borders, by contrast, only enters the picture for the Haiti earthquake when the scale of the medical crisis on the ground called for an organization built specifically around emergency healthcare delivery rather than general disaster relief. That kind of matching, choosing the right organization for the specific type of crisis rather than defaulting to the same charity every time, suggests a more deliberate approach than simply writing a check to whichever cause happens to be trending in the news that week. Bullock's charitable footprint isn't limited to disaster relief. She has also supported causes tied to foster youth and arts education. In 2015, she partnered with the Art Plus Practice Foundation, an organization based in Leimert Park, Los Angeles, founded by artist Mark Bradford, philanthropist Eileen Harris Norton, and activist Alan D. Castro. The foundation's mission centers on supporting local foster youth while giving the surrounding community free access to museum-curated contemporary art. Bullock debuted a pair of custom shoes at a film premiere that year, then had 10 similar pairs autographed and auctioned off, with all proceeds going directly to the foundation's work. She has also been known to help people well outside the spotlight of a major disaster. In one case reported by entertainment outlets, she donated $5,000 to a fundraiser for a retired Beverly Hills hotel pool manager who had fallen on hard times in his 80s, part of a larger crowdfunding effort that helped him get back on his feet. She's also been linked to smaller, undisclosed gifts to causes that never made headlines at all, according to people close to her circle. Her support of the Art Plus Practice Foundation, in particular, reflects a slightly different philanthropic instinct than the disaster relief giving. Rather than responding to a single dramatic event, it's an ongoing investment in the everyday infrastructure that helps foster youth access mentorship, education, and stability outside the immediate context of a crisis. Foster care is a system she would go on to become closely familiar with a few years later through her own adoption journey, which makes her early involvement with an organization built around foster youth feel less like a coincidence and more like an early thread of interest that would later become personal in a much deeper way. Bullock has generally kept her personal life guarded, but in recent years she has been more open about one part of it, her decision to build her family through adoption and what she has learned as a white mother raising 2 black children. In December 2021, she appeared on Red Table Talk, the interview show hosted by Jada Pinkett Smith alongside Willow Smith and Adrienne Banfield Norris. It was one of the most candid public conversations Bullock has had about motherhood. She spoke about the emotional weight of the adoption process and described a sense that the timing of both adoptions felt connected to her late mother, saying she felt without a doubt that her mother had brought her children to her. She also talked honestly about the racism she has encountered from strangers simply for being seen in public with her kids, telling the hosts that whatever ugliness she runs into on that front is not her problem to carry. She didn't shy away from the more uncomfortable parts of the conversation either. She acknowledged that she sometimes wishes she and her children shared the same skin color, not because of how she feels about them, but because of how much easier it might make certain interactions with strangers. It was a rare moment of vulnerability from someone who has spent most of her career keeping her private life firmly out of public view. Author Rhonda Roorda, who has written extensively about transracial adoption, said afterward that conversations like Bullock's help put a spotlight on an experience that a meaningful share of American adoptive families quietly navigate every day. None of this charitable and advocacy work happened in a vacuum. Bullock's acting career has spanned more than 3 decades, from breakout roles in Speed and While You Were Sleeping in the 1990s, through her Oscar-winning performance in The Blind Side, to more recent work in films like Gravity, Bird Box, and The Unforgivable. Her divorce from Jesse James in 2010 played out in the media at the same time she was finalizing the adoption of her son, and by her own account, that period asked her to hold both enormous personal turmoil and enormous joy at once. Rather than retreating from public life afterward, she leaned further into causes that mattered to her, even as she kept the details of her children's day-to-day lives almost entirely private. That combination of very public philanthropic record paired with a very private family life is part of what makes her approach distinct from a lot of other celebrities who build entire media strategies around their charitable work. Part of the reason Bullock's giving has drawn attention, even without her seeking it out, is the sheer consistency of it. Disaster philanthropy from celebrities tends to spike immediately after a tragedy and then fade once the news cycle moves on. Researchers who study charitable giving after major disasters have found that most donations, from ordinary people and public figures alike, arrive within the first 6 weeks of an event and drop off sharply after that. Bullock's pattern has held for more than 20 years, and across a wide range of unrelated events, from terrorist attacks to earthquakes to hurricanes to wildfires, which is part of why organizations like the Red Cross have singled her out publicly as an unusually reliable donor. In 2012, Forbes included her on a list ranking the most generous celebrities in Hollywood, citing her Haiti earthquake relief donations specifically. But by most accounts, recognition was never really the point for her. Multiple outlets that have tracked her giving over the years note the same thing. Many of her donations only became public knowledge because a charity's annual report mentioned a major gift, or because a local news outlet in New Orleans happened to notice a name on a donor list. It's a strategy, whether intentional or not, that has aged well for her. Celebrities whose charity work is closely tied to their public image sometimes face skepticism when a donation looks timed to a movie release or a moment of bad press. Because Bullock's giving predates most of her major publicity cycles and keeps showing up in years when she has nothing to promote, it's harder to read any single gift as a calculated PR move. The Red Cross statement following her Harvey donation in 2017 captured this well, framing her contribution not as a headline-grabbing gesture, but as one more example of a relationship the organization had built with her over more than a decade of prior giving. Sandra Bullock's public life offers an unusual split. On one side is an actress with one of the most recognizable careers in modern Hollywood, someone whose face has been on movie posters for 30 years. On the other is a private citizen who has spent 2 decades quietly funding disaster relief, rebuilding a storm-damaged high school one program at a time, and supporting foster youth through the arts, almost none of it accompanied by a press tour. In recent years, she's added one more layer to that public record, an occasional, unusually honest window into what it's meant to build a family through adoption and to navigate the realities of race as a white mother raising black children in America. None of it fits neatly into a single narrative, and that seems to be exactly how she prefers it. She has never framed her giving as a brand or a mission statement. It shows up in her actions instead, in a check written after a hurricane no one is talking about anymore, or a school in New Orleans that quietly got a new health clinic because someone she knew mentioned it to her once. What do you think about the way Sandra Bullock has used her platform, quietly funding disaster relief, while opening up more recently about her family? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.